Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds, and today I'm hanging out with Raul or Rick, whichever you may be, sir. Um,
Who
you gave me choices.
knows?
You gave me choices. Now I'm confused. I'm like, I don't know what to call them.
It's all good. So yeah, hey everyone, I'm Rahul. I also go by Rick professionally. I am from Robot Studios.
Yes, so you'd reached out to us with a product and shot us a link to check out, and it's a beefy product. It's a decent size, and I'm like, I always feel bad when we get these because I'm like, for us to go through 300-400 pages of something, especially if when there's multiple of us, is really tough. But I just kind of like flipped through and looked at the art, and the art is fantastic. I mean, if you kind of like, it's kind of like I want to say anime, but not really. But I like it. It's fun. It's vibrant.
Absolutely, that's been like a fantastic like thing for us to focus on. Art's always been what I feel that most people are drawn to, aside from the content, right? Like, so your art is sometimes everything, really. So I will give my buddy Naichi your best in that respect. He's our artist. You can go check him out. I can send links. So if anybody wants to check out his art, he's doing active commissions. So if anybody wants to do their characters done up like ours, he's one of our mainstay rogue artists, if you will. And I can shoot a link. So if you guys want to, kind of shout out to him on Instagram, do
Yeah,
that.
I'm sure you'll get some takers on that because it really does look fantastic.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. That's months of, does this look right? Does that look right? Do the clothes on her look right? Oh, what do we do? Like that's. I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. We started working with a couple artists ourselves, and the whole art directing thing is brutal. I feel so bad. It's like every time when someone is like, they send me something, I'm like, oh, can you make this change or make that change? I always feel like a dick.
No, I'm the same way. And all of my artists are kind of used to this side of me that you're not really seeing right now. But when we're in the thick of it, it's more like, all right, this has to look perfect, and I don't care how many iterations it takes, right? So we all have like a long-standing relationship. All my artists, regardless if they're on a freelance level or kind of long-term relationships. Everyone gets involved. I allow for like a lot of creative kind of freedom in terms of I've only got the ideas in my head. I want your ideas to kind of come in, have a drink or two, commingle a little bit, and see what blossoms from that. So that's been like a lot of our kind of art direction styling. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a lot of fun. We just started a project that's kind of like that with our patrons where we take a video and we conceptualize a bunch of stuff and then we send it off to someone that writes much better than us and be like, "Hey, turn this into something." And it's really cool to see what they come back with from your ideas.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So going in as far as the book is concerned, like, do you guys have any questions for me
Well,
regarding like
let's
yeah,
start from the beginning.
sure, sure.
The kind of like the elevator pitch, and I was under the impression that you guys were doing Pathfinder stuff, but that's not the case.
Okay, yeah. So real quick, Robot Studios, we are really interested in having the community kind of join us along for the adventure when it comes to our content. So yeah, we started out with Pathfinder content just because that was near and dear to us, and we're still going to be doing Pathfinder content going forward. We have about 4 books in the pipeline right now. 2 of which are Pathfinder centric, and we have an entire 3-book product package for 5th edition D&D for all of our 5th edition fans. In regards to the product that's up right now, which is the Rogue's Field Guide, we have all of the races actually getting 5th edition conversions, and we have a separate book coming out which compiles all of the 5th edition stats and info for all of the races into one book for all of our friends who are 5th edition aficionados. We didn't want to leave you guys in the dust. Pathfinder is just, I started with 3.5 way back like in high school and in college, so natural progression there. Started doing some interning work for Little Red Goblin Games and for Lewis Porter Jr. Design. Did some writing freelance for them. Decided I liked Pathfinder as like a system. I would like to create more content for us. And then so one thing led to another. I reached out to my friends who are also designers. and artists, and then here we go. So we made our first Pathfinder product, which will also be our first 5th edition product very shortly. And then on that level, we've got, as I kind of told you or hinted at a little earlier, for everyone who's interested in 5th edition content, we have a 3-product package that we're going to be kickstarting sometime in July, roughly. It's going to be 3 books, all horror themed. So, look forward to that come like October, the holiday season, as far as a release is concerned. We got for those who kind of feel like their 5th edition games could be like a little bit more intense, a little bit more bloody, a little bit more gory, something out of like 300, right? We have the fantastic kind of cinematic, visceral combat starter pack, which is called Doom and Slaughter. The second book is the aforementioned Tome of Terror, which is a compilation of all of our horror-themed content for 5th edition, which basically kind of dives into like a grim, dark, Lovecraftian horror, how to implement those rules into your 5th edition gameplay, some brand new classes, weapons, magic items, the whole 9 yards there. And then the last book, to kind of tie it all together, you need a place to kind of put this all in perspective, right? So we have a fantastic new campaign setting guide coming out called Aldernothy, Gateway to the Frontier. And that's based on like old kind of the early days of the colonies here in the Americas. So like the Dutch colonial period, the Spanish Inquisition, or not the Inquisition, but like the Cortez's runs on the Mayans, and Fernando's on the Incas, or not Mayans, Aztecs. So like the early days of colonizing the Americas and all the kind of brave new world. Here's this new land to explore, but we don't know what's around the corner or in the bushes hiding. So that's kind of tying that all together in one campaign setting guide that takes the concept of exploring the frontier to its kind of final level. So that's going to be a 3-book product package coming out. We're going to be announcing the Kickstarter and a lot of the preliminary content, getting a chance for the community, for you guys out there to come join us in the adventure step by step. This is going to be a very organic development process. We're even going to have kind of up to vote as far as what content we kind of work on next, especially for Pathfinders. We're going to be kind of announcing everything that we have in the pipeline, getting some feedback from the community, seeing what they're into, especially with the changes coming up, Pathfinder 1st edition transitioning into Pathfinder 2nd edition. It's exciting stuff for us, but we want to make sure that we do right by the fans, we do right by the community, we do right by our kind of mission and the content and the sort of creative gems, the hidden gems that we'd like to offer up to you guys that we found during our journey.
So, in the chat, Zareth Gaming says he'd like advice on making races.
Okay, all right. What specifically would he like advice on? Because that's a pretty broad topic.
It is. Well, eventually, the chat will catch up and I'll see it.
No, it's all good. So I guess my kind of general advice for creating races is start specifically. I even have like a checklist. Let me see if I can pull that open. But while I'm talking,
you don't have it memorized?
Yeah, I should have it memorized. But that's why we document everything, right? But yeah, on that.
Processes are very important.
Processes are extremely important. That's the first thing, right? Is make sure you've got your process right, written down. But anyway, in regards to races, you got to start with the core concept first. Like, is this a race? Is this a monster? Because a race can imply different things. You got to think about the physical attributes as well as like the culture, and it's a bit of a fine line to walk across, kind of like a tightrope. The way we thought of a lot of our races was, okay, what would be amazing for a player to both encounter from like a diplomatic standpoint, like pseudo diplomacy, like, okay, you're just strolling around the next corner, there's a village of Khartajan, right? One of our races in the book. What's up with them? How are they kind of living their lives? And then if you want to play one as a player, what unique experience does that deliver to you? in a way that's also like setting agnostic. So that's been like a main focus of all of our content, is we didn't want to get tied down to a setting. So we kind of just made some general assumptions from like a macro. Okay, you'll be encountering some sort of fantasy element in there. So we can talk about spells. We can provide some of the class material. So all of our characters in the rogues field guide rare races. Basically, we wanted their character classes to feel organic as far as what the character themselves should be able to do in kind of their history. So instead of doing one single class, we actually went with a multi-class kind of 2/3 ratio. So for every 2 levels taken in one class, you get another level taken in another class, and you get this kind of hybrid, very organic feeling, and that also ties into their backstories, which are all unique. Here we go. So,
what was the process you guys went through when you were coming up with your guide to rare races? What were like the beats? You're like, okay, we have to hit this and we have to hit that.
So we wanted to avoid like Star Trek syndrome, which is like, okay, they're like humans, but like blank thing is different. Oh, they're like humans except like forehead ridges / minor kind of physical change. So none of that. And then we didn't want to do like the thing where, okay, let's just take some orcs and let's give them like the samurai culture of Japan, or like let's throw them into the Edo period Japan and let's make that a race, right? So it's not like a bunch of cultural mix matching. We wanted to take the physical features that we wanted to have represented or give players the ability to kind of interact with and say, all right, based on these elements, what kind of organic culture would develop from there? So it took a while, but I happen to be like, aside from like my day job, I was an uber nerd in like the truest sense growing up. So a lot of the things that I was researching early on in life, I wanted to go into paleontology, which requires you to have background in biology, geology, a little bit of archaeology, anthropology. So all of the ologies were covered almost. In kind of my reading material and history. So I try to like bring that all into my writing, and so many days and nights were spent on Wikipedia, kind of, or not even just Wikipedia, like just on the internet through Google, doing as much research as I could to make sure that everything that we kind of incorporated into the book had some sort of anchor in real life.
So James Leslie, when designing a new player race, how do you accurately provide features but keep it balanced with default races like elf and human while keeping it unique?
Okay, so that's, again, a bit of a tightrope walk. A lot of our races are not what an average person would consider to be balanced. I'm a firm believer in, if you are a dungeon master / game master, whatever you'd like to call yourself, that if you know your craft well enough, you can balance any encounter for any sort of like ability spectrum on your player's level. So we wanted to stay true to like what did we want to represent, like from a biological level, from like an organic level with races. So we have races that have fire immunity, which is the iwaningen. An average person coming across that might be like, that's a bit OP, and I would be like, all right, yeah, well, they're immune to fire, but they're not immune to acid, cold, electricity, or anything else. It's just fire. So yeah, your burning hand spell is no longer useful. You have to kind of adjust with the time. So that player gets a unique experience in terms of, oh, they're no longer weak to something like their elf ranger character would be weak to, or so on and so forth along those lines. So they get like a new experience, but with that comes new challenges also for the dungeon master as well. So want to take all experience levels into account, so that way we do have a full spectrum of races going from and in Pathfinder it's really convenient, not so much in 5th edition, so I apologize for all my 5th edition fans out there. I'll just try to kind of relate this to you as much as possible. In Pathfinder race creation, to have what's known as race points in the advanced race guide, which makes race creation very, very simple, as in you kind of say, all right, what's your bank? It's like rolling up points for your character, like a point buy system, but it's for races. So you have 3 categories, which are kind of like your normal or standard races, and they're anywhere from 10 to 15 race points. And then your advanced races are anywhere from 16 to 21 race points, and then your monstrous races are anywhere from 21 to 35 RP. And that's kind of how we have everything broken up. So like centaurs, riders, gargoyles, they're all on the monstrous end of the spectrum. Your tieflings, your ASMRs are all on your standard side of the spectrum. And then everything else is kind of covered in between, like lizard folk, cat folk, so on and so forth. So as far as like balancing is concerned, just kind of in your head, get like an idea of where you want your race to fall on that spectrum and kind of what you want them to be compared to in terms of abilities or power level, if you will, right? And that's what it really just comes down to, is kind of understanding where on the spectrum you lie, locking that in kind of creatively, and then adjusting as concerned. And that's really just what we did.
So how many, in the Field's Guide to rare races, how many races did you come up with in there?
So like as far as, so obviously I had my team to work on them with me, so it wasn't like a solo act completely.
Well, when I say you, I mean the general you.
Yeah.
You Robot Studios. Or
yes,
Rogue Robot.
So we have 12 races, and then we have what's known as a racial template, which is like a standard monster template, but you can apply it to yourself as a player character, and we have the rules for that. That's actually really interesting. That's based on, it's called the Veyatman. It's based on a concept in like Hindu mythology, the concept of like two souls in one body. And it also takes a lot of influence from like, you know, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde mythos, if you will. So it's a being that is born with two souls occupying the same space and time. So when I say like the same body, it's more like they can actually switch bodies like back and forth, which is also based on the BBC version of Dr. Jekyll, where Mr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde were two separate entities that just occupied the same space and time, and they could switch between the two of them. And there were like abilities kind of interlaced with that. So yeah, I take a lot of influence from what I've seen in other kind of mediums, whether those be books, TV, movies, video games, the whole nine yards, just like any other creative. It all kind of gets jumbled up in your brain, and you're just like, oh, you know, that sounds interesting, or oh, that looks interesting, and you get to kind of pillify and compress everything in together, and that's what we do. So a lot of our motto, as far as Rogue Robot Studios is concerned, and kind of our design practices, is that we find hidden gems of amazing content everywhere in our walks of life, and we just want to kind of bring those gems together, make it part of a little treasure pile, and deliver that to you guys, so that when you join us on the adventure, you're getting your money's worth.
Yeah, steal all the things. It's kind of one of our mottos.
Steal all the things. There we go. All right, that's definitely a better way of putting it. I'm sorry if I'm being like overly poetic.
Well, you know, you just never know where you're going to take inspiration from. I mean, like, exactly. Well, you know, one of the things that we kind of added to our campaign setting, and we've talked about, came from Car Talk. So, so on NPR, and they were talking to this woman about getting parts from like a junkyard or something, and they're like, don't let the junkyard harpies get you. And I was like, oh my god, that has got to be a thing.
That is okay. You might. I mean, hey, if you guys don't want that, we'll totally make it for you. Junkyard harpies. You tell me when you guys want that by. We'll get you some junkyard harpies. I'm totally down for that. We
totally did. We kind of did a video on it. So like,
all right.
We instead of having the traditional harpy song, instead when they sing, they like animate trash and junk.
That's actually really cool. So instead of dominate person, you have animate objects. Like
yeah.
Animate objects. I like that.
So, yeah, you know, like I said, you just never know where you're going to take inspiration from, and where it's going to come, and where you're going to go with it. And that's the great thing about the hobby, is like just taking those little things and be like, okay, here's a spark, and now you can rework it. Because at the end of the day, like, no one's really doing anything new, because like, you know, as a species, we've been telling stories for a long time. So now we're just going to tell variations on somebody else's story.
Yes, no, I completely agree. To that extent, however, I do make it a point to try to be as original as humanly possible. Much to my coworkers, like Sharman. So they're like, oh, you know, we can just kind of slap this together. I'm like, no. We need to be precise about this. We're gonna really make something amazing. So some of the races had gone through some reworks to kind of make sure that we were going as unique as possible in the book. So for everyone kind of watching and listening to us right now, if you like the content that we've come out with the rare races, one of the products that we're actually coming out with that is available for you guys to kind of vote on real soon, get a small taste of what we have going on in that book. And then you can say, hey, do we want this for the next product? So we got 3 of those coming out for Pathfinder. Long story short, it is the same product line, so Rogue's Field Guide, but the set of rare races, it is Flora and Fauna 1. So it is our own custom bestiary full of all of our monsters, monster templates, monster feats, monster spells, the whole 9 yards as far as your monsters to really kind of take your players. If you're a DM or if you're a player, you get to see something really amazing that you didn't think you were going to see before in the existing Pathfinder bestiary, and we're all kind of putting that together in one amazing package, another hidden gem from Rogue Robot Studios to you, and that would be going to make the official announcement end of next month with some content being lined up. So this is our thank you for being our jumping board, if you will, to really get the ball rolling.
You're quite welcome. And folks, if you're watching and listening now or in the future, as always, in the description on YouTube and Facebook, you can find Rogue Robot Studios. You can find their socials, the website, all that good stuff. Go check them out. And if you happen to be watching over on Twitch, well, either Google or come on over to YouTube or Facebook and snag the links.
Just look for that, and you'll find us.
So KB wants to know, what race have you created or helped create is your favorite, and why is that?
Oh, God. All right. Oh, God. This is like asking like a parent to like pick their favorite child. Shit.
We like to do that here.
Okay. Okay. Are you guys okay if I pretend they're twins, like brother and sister? I'm just saying like both of them because it's really.
I'll go with sure.
Okay. So in the book, it's actually the first race that you encounter alphabetically. That's how we have everything organized in the context of the book. But it's the branchad, and the branchad are the neutral aligned kind of parallel to ASMRs and tieflings, as in they're humans, but the bloodline is derived from neutrally aligned outsiders such as aeons, axiomites, proteans, and all the kind of different variations there on and in between within the Pathfinder expanse of monsters and entities, right, on the outsider level. So you gotta get your bloodline and your abilities from that side of your parentage, which puts you in a different category compared to ASMRs and tieflings. So it was just a lot of fun to come up with all the abilities, to research all the neutrally aligned outsiders, to kind of consolidate all that information, because I was always and a lot of the inspiration for the race just came from the simple fact is like, okay, well, so all these neutrally aligned outsiders exist. We can assume that some of them are going to be meeting some humans, and then, some forges or some bonds shall be forged from those relationships, some deeper than others, and so on and so forth. And so what happens if you get a child born from that relationship, right? Well, they're not an ASMR and they're not a tiefling, so what are they, right? And so that's what we came up with there to kind of fill that void from the player standpoint. So I really am just a fan of the character that we designed. His name is Typhon, obviously based on the Greek god of monsters, Typhon, but his name is spelled a little bit differently. But anyway, he's just a really cool, kick-ass character. He's a brawler, sorcerer, multi-class. And he is a former slave that had a really rough childhood growing up, and so he took it upon himself with the discovery of his own kind of martial and magical prowess to be a champion of the downtrodden and to kind of be a very forward-thinking kind of take it to the man abolitionist. So he goes around kind of being like a champion of the people. And so that's his MO. So that's the first race that you come across. And then a little ways down the line is one of the races that I mentioned earlier, which are the khartajan. They're based on the actual monster called the khartajan, which is in Pathfinder Bestiary 5, which is also based on a mythological creature of the same name from Persian and Iranian like mythology, from those kind of desert regions. It was seen as a savior for people lost in the desert, dying of thirst or poisoned by snakes and scorpions. That this being would kind of come across these travelers who were, on death's door and rescue them. So we're like, oh, that's a cool idea from like a monster standpoint. What if we created like a race that had some of those abilities? So if you're ever stuck in the middle of, some giant expanse or waste, you can always pray that there's like a Khartajan village around the next dune. So they're pretty cool, and they're rare because, unfortunately, due to their abilities, other races who had ventured into the waste thought, this might be something that we could, find valuable. So they were hunted to near extinction. So they have a lot of beef with a lot of the more predatory races, whether those be like selfish humans or like gnolls and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of kind of lore elements that you can bring into the game.
So what's the deal with the Cosmo tapestry looking guys?
Cosmo tapestry. Okay. So you're taking a look at the pallesytes, which are actually my third favorites. That's a nice transition. So I'm glad we addressed them anyway.
So first of all, I'll say why I described them that way. Their skin looks like they've been completely like tattooed with like a cosmic scene on them, like stars and moons and stuff like that.
Yeah, so they're actually made of star stuff in the truest sense. They're another kind of colloquial name that you can throw into your world. Is a lot of races refer to them as star children. They are literally psychic energy or cosmic energy bound to very special meteorites that comprise their skeleton, and their skeleton is basically made of hard light, if you will, and that contributes to their unique race abilities. And they come from a distant world, wherever that world shall be in respect to your world of your campaign setting and your games at home. And they just basically fall from the sky with no memory of where they came from, and they behave like children, also contributing to the name, like Star Child. So they come in, kind of brand new, and they're molded by their environment. The titular character, our pallesyte, iconic character that's supplied to you guys in the book, his name is What Are You? Because he responded to the first question that was asked of him, which is, what are you? And he was just like, I assume that's my name. So it's got a lot of like Superman falling, to Earth from Krypton, sort of vibe to it, right? Or E.T., right? So he gets discovered by a farmer and his children, and they kind of adopt him part of the family. So he becomes one of the household. And it's without getting too much into detail, because the story is fantastic. I really hope you guys take a read into it. So we have these background stories for our characters with like a little excerpt from their life or their origins, what have you. But long story short, he ends up being like a farmhand, and he figures out that he has a little bit of influence over the weather, so he's able to make crops grow. But then there's a drought that kind of comes up upon them, and he can't fix the drought overnight, so he kind of goes into a bit of a despair. Right, and he leaves for a bit, comes back, and some stuff happens around the homestead, which I don't want to spoil right now. So that's where you can kind of get into it. So yeah, as far as the cosmic tapestry is concerned, they're literal people of the stars, born of the cosmic gases and energy that are hidden within the space between stars. Right, they have their own racial deity as well provided. So that's the other thing that we did. We wanted to make sure that for all of the characters and players who wanted to play as clerics or oracles or inquisitors or whatever kind of god or deific based magic class that you want to incorporate into your game, war priests, paladins, we also supplied kind of our own unique takes on either deities that were worshipped like exclusively by the races or were preferred or venerated to a greater degree by some of the racial characters, and you can incorporate those deities in your campaign settings or draw parallels between some of the other gods that you might have.
So DM Don wants to know, are there stories for everything in the book?
Yes. I mean, for everything, as in all of the characters have background stories, and all of the gods have like description stories and kind of origin stories. So yes, as far as the two major aspects, the player characters. Sorry. Thank you, Jarvis.
You have a message.
Yeah.
I think he's probably specifically talking about like the races themselves. They have stories and origins.
Yeah. So all of the races have background detail as far as like their origins are concerned, or like how they kind of may fit into your world. We have, like I said, it's a 300-page book. We went the full 9 yards, as much as I could kind of fit in with that upper cap in mind, to make sure that we had as much information going forward, because they're rare, and so you're not going to see them as often as you might see an orc or a tiefling or an ASMR or like an orc. Who said orc? See, that's the other thing. What are they called? Vishkanya or the Naga derived ones. So yeah, Pathfinder, a Kitsune, Tengu, your uncommon races, gargoyle centaurs. So they're all there, and so their populations might fluctuate depending on how you have your worlds kind of set up. In our mind, when we were developing, although we can't use Galarian outright, I kind of went with the ratios of races found throughout like Galarian, and saying, all right, so if you want to bring these races directly into your Pathfinder game, or in Forgotten Realms for D&D as well, kind of how would they stack within the hierarchy of races, and where would you find them? So we came up with reasons as to why they're not like all over the place, right, by comparison to elves, humans, dwarves, etc. And so we brought that information to the players and to the GMs. But yes.
So Zareth Gaming says the Star Children are basically Kender, Space Kender. I think that's what he said.
Kender. Where's that?
Oh, you might be too young.
No. I'm pretty good with my retro sci-fi, retro relative to myself, or classic science fiction. So if you can kind of.
So Kender are from Dragonlance, and
Dragonlance. Okay.
It was and it was like kind of like their version of the halfling, except for all of them are insanely curious and kleptomaniacs.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that every single pallesyte is a kleptomaniac, but the curiosity definitely does follow through.
And this as a species, they have no concept of personal property.
That is definitely like a player decision. I would love to see or hear back from someone who incorporated a pallesyte character into their gameplay and kind of played them that way. That sounds fascinating, actually, because they have the ability to go intangible for like a few moments using their natural blink ability. So objects will like phase through them, so they can kind of avoid hits from swords and whatnot, because they're literally made of star stuff, so they're only in solid form when they want to be, and they can kind of dissolve themselves or disapparate.
Your sound is kind of dropping in and out.
I'm so sorry. Here, let me try to adjust that.
So it's not too bad. We've definitely had worse. Yeah, the general consensus in our group is people that played Kenders really just wanted to be assholes and annoy the rest of the party. Oh, and that's the other thing. It's like every one of them, I don't know if you have kids or not, but every one of them is like a toddler with when you answer one of their questions, it's like they answer with what or why. And it just goes on for eternity.
No, I totally understand. I have nieces and nephews, and in my own sense, I'm basically just a kid that learned how to pay taxes, and that's how I like to think of myself. At the end of the day, yeah. We don't really stop being. We just learn how to pay taxes, and that's really the major thing that changes.
I don't know that we learn; they just take it out of your paycheck anyway. So,
well, try not to get audited. There we go.
There you go. The DM layer is there a quick look sort of preview of some of the pages available so we can get an idea of the content before purchasing?
So yeah, if you literally go on, I can send a link in the chat right now, but it's our drive-through RPG link for everyone there. So let me do that real quick. But if you just
don't bother, the link the chat probably won't let you do the link.
Okay, so for everyone who wants to find our book, it's on Drive-Thru RPG. If you just Google, Rogue's Field Guide Rare Races, or Google Rogue Robot Studios, or search it within the context of Drive-Thru RPG, will come up fairly fast.
We have a couple moderators in the chat. Maybe one of them will grab it and throw it over there. We'll see.
It's all good. It's all good. Follow me on Instagram. I have links. I just put up one today. Anyways, to answer his question, yes, the preview that's on Drive-Thru RPG basically gives you the branch hood for free. So You get one race for free, not even downloading any other links. You just download the sample preview that gives you most of their content, including all their race important content. All of our race content is also available on D20 PFRSD for free as well. So all the races stats and everything.
Sweet. Yeah, so guys, you can just head over there, grab that, and check it out, and take a look. Like I said, it's a very distinct art style, but I think most people will dig it. Unless you're into like super realistic art, then maybe not. But I think it's fun and is pleasant to look at. So
yeah, we wanted to go something different, vibrant, realistic, but also not, this weird kind of perfect midway point between everything. And I found that in one of my very good friends who's been an artist with us for a very long time, and we're going to continue to use his artwork for all of our projects going forward. As well as we've reached out to a whole mass of artists. So we basically have like a whole secret ninja squad of artists just kind of waiting in the wings to get content out to you guys.
Yes. So those links just went up in the chat,
yep.
as well as Nerdarchy Doug threw up. We have a coupon code over there as well for Drive-Thru RPG. So you guys, if you want to use that, you can. You said you're going to be moving into producing 5e content. How far off is that?
So the rare races have 5D conversions. We just need to kind of compile them into a book. We've been putting out little individual samples, so each race can kind of contained individually has been going up as Instagram promos for a few weeks now. And then we're going to be consolidating all of those into a 5th edition book again by the end of the month. So a lot of our kind of product announcements are going to be synchronized around Phoenix Comic Con, which is coming up towards the end of May. So that's where I live, and that's our kind of home base as far as public perception is concerned. We're always at Phoenix Comic Con every year, year after year. A lot of our friends get together there. Long story short, if you want to pick up any of our content there, like physical copies, we basically have digital download cards. We send you links to Drive-Thru RPG, as well as our Patreon, as well as our Instagram. All of our socials kind of in one little cute little card. So you can get those, and I'll be walking around. Other people will be walking around, handing those out throughout the event. And then all of our social media kind of announcements are going to be synchronized around Phoenix Comic Con. I'm going to be on a few panels there myself, so definitely there'll be some kind of shameless plugging during those as well.
Nice, so you guys can check that out. And thanks to the mods for getting those links up in the chat. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much to everyone out there. We really, really appreciate it.
We actually never did have a discount code to Armor Class 10, unfortunately. Their shirts are pretty cool. They do put out some of the best gaming shirts out there, I believe. So sorry, I had a question and lost it in the chat. I do that all the time.
No, it's totally fine.
Yeah. But yeah, so it sounds like the 5e stuff is on the horizon. I mean, a good portion of our audience is 5e. So how much of a monkey wrench did Paizo kind of throw in the works? I know a lot of publishers are like, "Oh, I didn't see that coming."
Some heads up would have been nice.
That
I'm not even speaking for myself there. I actually am the admin for the third-party Pathfinder promotions group on Facebook, as well as the Reddit that's associated with that, as well as the Discord server that's associated with that. So, like, long story short, I basically have a professional relationship with all the other third-party developers for Pathfinder, and aside from, like, a very small, minor portion of our population, nobody saw that coming.
Yeah, I think Frog God at GaryCon, they had a sale on their Pathfinder stuff, and they were selling it by the pound, and they sold like something ridiculous, like 500 pounds worth of Pathfinder books.
Absolutely, I don't discount that at all. Frog God is fantastic with their content. They've been generating stuff for years now. I've done some collab work, and that's the other thing that we're kind of looking forward to, is depending on how things fall in regards to the first edition, second edition split. The landscape may change. People are going to be more open to doing some collabs, getting together, working on products together to kind of attack the beast that is now second edition. So we'll see how that goes. As far as our own plans are concerned, like I said, I'm just going to wait for our first chunk of first edition content to get done, get some more feedback from you all, the community, have you guys kind of join us on the adventure as we move forward, get a beat on what kind of hidden gems you guys are looking for as far as content is concerned, especially in regards to the bestiary coming out. We also have our own custom campaign setting. Let me just kind of drop the announcement. I'll just kind of give you guys like a full bird's eye view. I don't know if I can get images. Can I send you like pictures and stuff if you want to throw it up on your screen? Is that
you know what? I will not be able to because
it's fine.
I'm not very tech savvy. Every time I've tried since we kind of switched to using the encoder, I've failed. I really just need to have someone show me how to do it.
It's all good. So for everyone watching and listening right now, like I said, just follow us. At Rogue Robot Games on Twitter and Rogue Robot Studios on Instagram. That's where we kind of do our daily and weekly announcements, and then of course at Rogue Robot Studios on Facebook. So we are definitely there. And then for those who are privy to the 5th edition homebrew groups on Facebook, as well as the D&D Beyond group on Facebook as well, and the third-party Pathfinder promo group on Facebook, will be throwing announcements down there. So that's kind of basically where we're going to be at going forward. As far as the products are concerned, let me start there and say that in addition to the Rogue's Field Guide Flora and Fauna 1, we also have a player-centric book called Rogue's Playbook, Freaky and Fun, which is all of our player-centric content. We actually have 5 new classes and 4 new prestige classes that are going to be included, with a whole host of magic items, feats, abilities, spells, player content along those lines. The whole new set of playable characters, like pre-generated iconic characters for you guys to enjoy, background information on them, kind of the same way that we did with the rare races. So that's another product coming out. And then my pride and joy, the thing that I'm most excited about coming forward, is our campaign setting. That's going to be a really big production. It's called Ostraca, World of Fortune. So this is based on my childhood love of like old 1920s, 30s, 40s kind of pulp sci-fi books and pulp, detective novels and noir style film, kind of all thrown together. Also a huge fan growing up of playing BioShock. That was one of my favorite games to come out in recent memory. So taking all that inspiration, throwing into one book. So if you are looking for a balls to the walls, really in-depth, pulpy, crunchy campaign setting that takes kind of like Bright, right? So if you were to rewind the clock on the Bright movie, maybe 70, 80 years or so back to like the Prohibition era of that world. That's kind of the level of technology that we're looking at. If you guys are fans of the Grim Noir Chronicles, taking a lot of inspiration from how they kind of structured their world, fantastic book series there. What else? As far as inspiration is concerned, yeah. So BioShock, Grim Noir Chronicles, the Bright movie, if you were to rewind the clock back, Boardwalk Empire, basically all of your 1930s kind of gangster noir, World War II, diesel punk, all in one campaign setting, brand new world, brand new nations to work with, monsters that you can integrate, lots of lore, and we're actually going to be doing kind of a vignette style book series that we're going to be throwing out with our newsletter that follows each one of the iconic characters that's going to be in that campaign setting guide and their sort of journey in history going forward.
Oh, so so it'll be some fiction to go along with it?
Oh yeah, some fiction written by yours truly.
Oh, nice. So Zero G wants to know, how big is the Rogue Robot team?
So we have 2 teams, 4 people working on Pathfinder content, not including myself, 4 people working on 5th edition content, not including myself. So I'm the linchpin that kind of hops back and forth.
You're the maestro that coordinates?
Yeah. It's a symphony in progress every single day.
I somewhat know what that's like. Red Jackal wants to know, any plans for Spelljammer-like races?
Spelljammer like races. Not currently, although we are definitely open to suggestions. So if sorry, what was the name one more time?
Red Jackal.
Red Jackal. So Red Jackal, if you have any kind of insight or requests, or if you'd like to throw something our way, just be like, hey, you guys should check this out, that sort of thing. Hit us up on Twitter, hit us up on Instagram, drop a like in the comments, hit us up on Facebook, just get the ball rolling. We'd love to hear back from you guys in the chat. If there's anything specifically you'd like me to take a look at it, at Platinum Spartan on Twitter. That's my personal Twitter handle. Just shoot me a message there, and I'll see if I can take a look into it. Definitely. So yeah, nothing in the works right now. However, we're open to a lot of content. But as I mentioned before, we got the Tome of Terror package on the 5th edition side, and then we have the Ostraca and Friends on the Pathfinder side.
So how long ago did you guys form up? How long has Rogue Robot been in existence now?
So specifically working on written tabletop content about 2 years, working on whatever my heart's desired and kind of using that as a personal brand, well over 5 years.
Cool. What do you want to go into some of the other stuff you've worked on?
So I started this company while I was still in college, so a lot of that stuff was never really took off as far as, getting beyond the realm of academia. So as far as like just really official stuff, we're getting our teeth into some other stuff on the horizon that's not related to Pathfinder 5th edition. We are teaming up with geekpsychology.com, and we are developing a unique RPG known as Rapid Personal Growth. So RPG the RPG. But for all of you kind of psychology nerds out there, it's basically a learning tool to take your personality type, that is your Myers-Briggs type indicator, and you can basically make your own custom squad. So we have 3 different variances on the board. I can disclose more information about that as time kind of permits. But basically, long story short, so I'm an ENTP. I know that kind of means gibberish to a lot of you people, but it stands for extroverted, intuitive, thinking, perceiving. Long story short, that means in my party that I play with, I have, taking center stage, I have a ranger. So you basically get like a class breakdown, and you can like pick whatever race you want. You can outfit them with whatever gear you want, but you got a ranger, and it kind of works like a dungeon crawler. So my ranger is in my lead position. He is supported by my wizard/arcanist, who is also supported by a paladin. And then, who's supported by a cleric, and then taking up rear guard is a paladin fighter. And so, based on your personality type, you basically create your own party of 4, like a classic like AD&D type setting, and you basically get to interact with the world however your dungeon master/game master permits, and you get to encounter the world not as like a singular character, but you're actually playing with a group of characters that you control. That form the whole, which is meant to represent you as an individual, or you can use that to role play as another like a psychology mindset, another Myers-Briggs type. For those of you who are familiar with that, and then you can get all your friends together. It's supposed to be like a more casual, not as crunchy game. So we think of it more like a real party game in the sense of a party game. So that way you get to learn about yourself, you get to learn about your friends, and you guys get to still kick some monster ass at the end of the day. I can say ass, right? I'm not
that's fine. Okay. I just watched an Adams Ruins Everything the other day on the Myers-Briggs.
Okay, yeah. It's like a skin, right? So I mean, in the same way that we have like the classic classes from a Dungeons and Dragons / role-playing game standpoint, like you're taking on a moniker, you're taking on a mindset. So it's more like, okay, what do you do with that mindset, rather than saying you are definitely this at all of your times. I mean, I've taken the test 6 or 7 times, and occasionally it comes up, but for the most part, I've gotten myself objectively typed by several people, including my partner, on the project. So I'm fairly confident in what that means, and even if it didn't mean anything, I would still keep doing what I was doing. So it doesn't make like a world of difference to me as far as knowing my type is concerned, but it does help me kind of coordinate myself, and that's really the advantage that we're hoping players take away from the experience, is that you kind of learn how you work at any given moment based on the challenge at hand, and take that kind of introspective knowledge and bring it to yourself in the real world.
The psychology and RPGs and gaming is like totally a thing right now. That kind of
Yes.
like over the last, I guess, like 6 to 12 months, I see keep popping up. Hey, jiggle your wire or something because you dropped out on your audio again.
I'm so sorry. Hang
It,
on, make
it seems like when you move, so it's probably just like a connection thing.
Okay, yeah, because I got two microphones. I got the Blue Yeti in the corner, and I got my headset microphone. I'm toggling between the two just to make sure that you're good.
So
Can you hear me? Yes.
yeah, that's better there. Just
Okay.
scream at the microphone; it'll be fine.
Hey, I forgot. All right.
You gotta like Steven Tyler, eat the mic.
Eat the mic.
Yeah.
Right, I'll just bring it over here. I'll just do that. 1 sec.
So, as always, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Just slap a question in front of it, and we will get to them.
Absolutely. But what is your take? You were mentioning that's a thing. What have you noticed as far as like psychology and gaming? Because that's
I know it's actually it's kind of cool. Like we've had a guest on, and their psychologist like wrote them a prescription to play more D&D. We had Dr. Megan Connolly on, and she uses it in her practice, and she was on GM tips, and she was talking about a lot of stuff like that, and the different things that are being used for. So my take is really the world is starting to be exposed to the benefits that we've kind of already been getting.
Absolutely. I agree 110%. A little bit of background, and this is going to be like a sharp contrast to, I guess, how I conduct myself now. But like growing up, when I say growing up, like middle school, high school years, I had friends like that weren't like my immediate close friends, but they were like on the circle just outside of that, right? So better than acquaintance, but not like super best friends. But anyway, long story short, there, they would play Dungeons and Dragons, and they'd have like an after-school tabletop gaming club where they'd also play like Warhammer, Dungeons and Dragons, kind of the real piece like combat games, so like the Star Wars games as well. And I would kind of walk by that room and be like, hey, passively like, what's up? But then also secretly, internally be like, you guys are such nerds, like more than me, right? Like there's like an uber level of nerdage there. And for the longest time, I didn't like scoff at them like openly, or I didn't like chastise them for their hobby at all, because I was equally nerd. Like I was super obsessed with Pokemon. I played Pokemon competitively for a really long time. So yeah, we all have our kingdoms of nerddom. But anyway, long story short, there is like I never took account of it as like a hobby or as a strong component of my life until I got to college. And then all of my friends who were in college with me for game development and game design theory, they basically got a group together and we started playing 3.5. I was just like, oh, there's that thing that I kind of ignored for my entire like high school career. Maybe I should give this a try. And so we started playing it. And then I was just like, where has this been all my life? Like, what the hell have I been missing out on? God damn it. So there's an epiphany right there. And then so naturally 3.5 evolved into Pathfinder. Then I was like, oh, I like Pathfinder. This jives very well with my kind of creative flow. And so I started like writing, and I started doing like write-ups of our campaigns, and I started writing more. And then one of my friends, Scott Gladstein, who was my senior when I was a freshman, we went to the same university. He runs Little Red Goblin Games, so I signed up with them as a guest writer / editor / intern for a few years, contributed to a few of their products. Then he put me in touch with Lewis Porter Jr., contributed to a few of his products. And then I was just like, hey, I have my game studio, which was made originally just for exclusively video game design. But then I discovered the world of tabletop gaming, and then I kind of did like a, like let's hop the fence. Let's see how things work on this side of the fence, because I was getting sick of all the politics and whatnot on the other side of the fence. So I've been welcomed by the tabletop community. I live in Phoenix, so I'm actually pretty good friends with most of the other tabletop game developers. We have like John Wick Presents out here, so all the 7th Sea kind of happens within my locale. On that note, we have an official Arizona Tabletop Game Developers Guild, and so we're going to be putting out a bunch of content and doing some organization and some events along those lines here. So for all of our tabletop game developers, that includes RPGs, of course, but then that also kind of incorporates like practical board games.
Yeah, LPJ is one of the people I really like following when it comes to talking about just the business of RPGs. He's got a lot of great insights. The Mighty Hob, when you have a plethora of races, do you find it turns the game into a kind of Star Wars-like setting where no race is particularly unusual?
I mean, you know, that's just the name of diversity. In Star Wars, there are still races that don't get along with each other, and there's still like racial tension. So it depends on, you know, how far you're willing to go from like a game master standpoint, or how you want to kind of, because you got to think of it like on the macro level, right? We just take our world into consideration, right? We have so many different cultures. So many people, walks of life, variations, things throughout the history books that have, you know, been brought with us into the modern day. And so when you walk down the street, you know, you're just doing your thing, and then that kind of like plays into it, right? So it's all about your temperament, how you want to kind of put a spin on your character, right? So the same thing works in Star Wars. I play plenty of Fantasy Flight, Star Wars, the RPG, as well as the Star Trek RPG too. So kind of bringing both camps into it. It really just depends on the temperament of your GM. What kind of story do they want to tell? Where does race fall into that? Where does your character's background fall into that? Where does the kind of culture that your character is accustomed to fall into it? Because you could be a pallesyte raised in a human community. So what would your perspective be on other pallesytes, right? Your crash landing happened in a fairly urban environment, in a metropolitan environment, so you were adopted fairly quickly, raised to be human. Like, what would that upbringing do for your character in regards to your world, and how would that kind of interact with other players? So all we're doing is providing more food for thought, really, and to give like more interesting angles to an average game, with all these races being added into it, and some of the background that we've kind of passed on to them.
I would kind of elaborate on that too a little bit, with that it's kind of like that statement is a little bit of an illusion anyway. If you added all the different cultural differences from the real world into your D&D game or Pathfinder game, which I feel some people try to do it to a certain extent, but not to the way it really is in the real world. And then were to double down on that, also do it with all the other races, right? Because there is this idea that we kind of play where like all the dwarves are kind of the same and all the elves are kind of the same, yet they really wouldn't be if they evolved at different places in the world. They culturally would be different. And so, and as far as being unusual, it really just depends where you are in the world with what particular race. Like if you're on the other side of the world and this race hasn't been seen, well, they're still going to be unusual. You know, you're still going to have to deal with racial bias and things like that, you know, depending on how cosmopolitan an area is, how accepting they are. So, like, all that can still really play in. And it depends on, as a gamer from, you know, both sides of the screen, how much you want to delve into that. Sometimes it's fun, but sometimes it's really just a pain in the ass.
Exactly. So we wanted to focus on giving some new player character options, and that's the real focus of the book, and then really say, all right, so we're kind of sick of the standard races that are available: humans, elves, dwarves, gnomes, halflings, half-orcs, half-elves, so on and so forth. Even getting into the parents of those, you know, what can we do to really spice up? Okay, we're going to enter this new place in your world, this new kind of uncharted area, or something's going on in this town, and it's different from what you expect. For example, one of the races there is called the Iwaningen, and they are effectively mer vampires, but they're not vampires. So you could see signs of Iwaningen activity, and they got like a backstory. Long story short, you know, there's good Iwaningen, bad Iwaningen, and even that kind of distinction is very gray, right? Because the only reason they suck blood is because they need it to survive. It's not even like, hey, we want to be like enormous a-holes and just kill and slaughter people. No, we kind of need some blood. So you can trade for us. You can trade your blood. We have stuff that we can offer, right? And then that's how we've kind of built them up. But, you know, there are some Iwaningen that are unfortunate to have this very extreme version of the malady that plagues them, and thus they are driven to subsequent extremes, and they kind of have like a more feral nature. And so some of the activity that you would want to throw in with an Iwaningen character or like an NPC especially is have them kind of stalk like a village, and you'll see signs of their activity, and one of your player characters might be like a, you know, well-to-do ranger or cleric or paladin or inquisitor, and be like, that's a vampire. and it turns out it's not a vampire, it's an Isoona. So that kind of having that sort of flexibility and that sort of freedom to kind of throw a curveball at your players. That's a lot of the angles that we've also taken with some of the races here as well.
So you basically created sucker fishmen.
Yeah. So hagfish, lamprey. Yeah, that's. I mean, from a biological equipment, that's how they behave. Yeah.
It just makes me think of allergy eaters.
But hey, they have. So when they suck blood, because they have like an overactive immune system, they actually also secrete a substance which acts as a cure disease. So that's one of their racial abilities. Is that they have such an overactive immune systems that their bodily fluids can also be used to cure diseases for other characters and creatures.
Nice. Then they can in turn be hunted and exploit it.
At the same time, yes. There's all these different elements. All the race abilities have these kind of layers to them that you can try to incorporate into your game. This is me supplying you with like Creator's like intended knowledge. So feel free to disagree and put your own spin on it. We welcome that. Really.
No, I just need Mufasa to explain this to Simba. That'd be perfect. It works for me. See, the vampire suckerfish, they exploit the villagers, but in turn, these humans over here exploit them for the medicinal
exactly circle of life, right? Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes my mind works in warped and strange, mysterious ways.
No, that's fantastic. I love that. I love that spin on it. I really appreciate it, David.
So we are up on the hour mark. What do you want to tell people before we head on out of here?
So for everyone out there, we really appreciate you guys getting us this far as being out there to support us. We coming up, we got 2 amazing product lines coming out for you. So for all of our 5th edition fans, stay tuned. We're going to finish doing the wrap-ups on the individual packets for all of our rare races, and then we're going to be doing one consolidated book. So that's going to be a 5th edition version of our rare race guide that's currently available for Pathfinder. On the Pathfinder side, we got Rogue's Field Guide Flora and Fauna, which is the next in the Field Guide kind of line of things. And then after that, we got Rogue's Playbook, Freaky and Fun, 5 new player classes for that. 4 new prestige classes, a whole bunch of magic items, the whole 9 yards there. And then My Pride and Joy, brand new kind of diesel punk high fantasy setting, Ostraca World of Fortune coming to you within the next year. That kind of wraps up our Pathfinder line before 2nd edition comes around to meet us. And then for all of our 5th edition fans, we're going to be really trying to get out there for you guys and put the hustle on. But we have the Tome of Terror horror package coming out. So it's going to be 3 books: Doom and Slaughter, Tome of Terror, and then Aldernothy Gateway to the Frontier, which is its own campaign setting. That's all going to be part of a product package. And so we're going to be putting announcements out and showing you bits of our content. We'd like to vote on, which one of those products you'd like for us to work on first so we can get it to your door the quickest possible and get some support for you guys. We're going to be announcing some Kickstarters going towards the summer and then going in towards fall for each one of these products. So basically, I just say come join us on the adventure. Follow us on social media so you can still hear back from us, and we'd love to hear your input. And break free, go rogue. That's what I have to end on.
All right, man. Thanks for hanging out with me. Really do appreciate you coming on, and thanks everyone who's been hanging out with us in the chat today. As always, we appreciate you guys and gals out there. And until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.